Hey, welcome back to ChickChat. We used to call it the Chamber Podcast, but we're just going to call it ChickChat because that's what we're doing. We're just chatting. We're going to talk about the TIF. I'm Jim Cowan, Director of the Chickasha Economic Development Council, President of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm your host, and we've got a series of these set up because this is an important issue for our city. We want to get a lot of information out there. We got a lot of questions submitted that we're going to try to make sure all the questions get asked. But let's get started by welcoming the Mayor of Chickasha, Mr. Chris Mosley. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Glad to be here.
So tell us a brief history. How long have you been on the council? How long have you been on mayor? You've been doing this Chickasha thing for a while.
I have been. I was on council the first time from 05 to 09 for 4 years then, and I got off because my boys were the age. It was really busy at that time. Then once they were in and leaving college, I said I'd like to do it again. So in 18, I ran for mayor. So I'm in my 6th year. So, at the end of this term in April, I have spent 10 years working for the council, for the citizens of Chickasha.
That's a very lucrative financial position, right? Because you get paid the big zero, right?
Squat. You get paid squat.
Zero, not a nothing. Just to be clear,
Right.
in full transparency, not a penny.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right.
Yeah, there's no compensation.
Well, thank you for all that you do for Chickasha. Your family has been a part of this community for generations and the Festival of Light. Before we dive into all the things about TIF, just kind of, people may not know your family's history here in Chickasha.
Well, my family business has been here since 1952, so 71 years we've been in operation. My grandfather moved here with my dad. My dad was 9. His sister was 10 years older. She was already out of the house when he was elected county superintendent. And so he oversaw all the rural schools in Grady County, because back then the law required the schools to be so many miles of each other so children could walk or ride their horse to school. And so you had all these little schools everywhere. Now there's like little sites, or you don't see much of them left. So you oversaw all those. And so I've been given letters from people that received it from him while he was superintendent. And then just recently, my wife was working with somebody who was in their 90s, and they remember my grandfather being in, signing his report card. And he goes, and something saying to the point that if it was easy, everybody would do it, or it was, it was something like that. And so it was really interesting to have that come back after, decades. He's been passed away now since 95, so 28 years. So it's amazing that he made that big of an impact with somebody and they still remembered it, because they had to be in grade school when that took place. But he taught rural school 8 through 12. My grandmother was, or 7 through 12, my grandmother taught 1st through 6th in the area of Oakdale, which is north and west of Rush Springs. It doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so when they moved to Chickasha and he was superintendent, she then taught at Meridian, which is north of the airport, and it's a big sign in a field. That's all it is.
Things change a little bit.
They do, yeah.
And speaking of a big sign in the middle of the field, as you see Chickasha now, and you said you've been mayor this 6 years,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So how do you think Chickasha is different now than it was 6 years ago when you became mayor?
Financial stability. I love numbers, and I was an accountant before I became an insurance agent. We're much more financially stable, and that took about 2 to 3 years to really get it under control. And so we're in a much better position that way. We have more development than we've ever seen in our history, in my history of Chickasha. Last count, and back in October, the building permit amount was about $43 million under construction, or we had permits for. And there's more to come. We know there's more coming. And so we've gone to the point now we've had to hire a third party to help us engineer it, because it's more than what our city engineer can take care of. And so it's really exciting to see, because I know as people move out of metropolitan areas, as we're seeing it from people moving here from like California and such, they're going to come here. And because they like the rural setting, they like the small town feel. People are tired of living on top of each other, and we got space to spread out. And so if we don't prepare for it, we're going to be behind the 8 ball and be in trouble. And so when that bypass comes in, which they should be moving dirt any time now, because I know they're bidding it, but it's projected to be done in about 8 years. So it's going to provide more flow of traffic. And then we have the more exits coming in within the next 5 years off H.E. Bailey. There's going to be 3 more exits here at Chickasha. So there'll be 5 within about 7-8 miles of us. So that's going to bring in more development. So unless we are preparing our infrastructure and where we're going to put people to live, and where they're going to shop, or where we're going to work, I said we'll be definitely behind the 8 ball.
So for those, 'cause sometimes you can look around, and here we are, it's a week before or a few days before Thanksgiving, 2023, and you look around like, wow, we see a lot of progress. Chick-fil-A is going to open up, neat things happening downtown. What would you say to the people who are like, why do we need to do anything? Aren't we doing good?
We're doing good, but we are working off existing places. The stuff like where Chick-fil-A is, and roasters coming in, and you have scooters that's there. A lot of that property is already here and is already developed and kind of ready to go. This would be areas that we're going to try to maybe recapture some that may be in flood. That's going to need work, or you're going to revitalize more of the downtown. And so like the grant that we've had, it's done more with brick and mortar. Now we've got to really take a hard look at infrastructure with the sewer, the water. We have a water treatment plant coming in about 3.5 years. We'll be having a new plant operational. Well, we know we've got a lot more lines to replace. We know there's just a ton of work. Some of the infrastructure is 120 years old. And so we have to address that stuff. We haven't addressed it in the past, and it's painful and it's expensive and it's slow. But these are all things we got to take a look at. That's why if we're not planning now, we're going to have a crisis, and we'll be definitely behind the 8 ball.
You just said talked about the past, and I go to a lot of council meetings, as many as I can, and often I'm hearing you all discuss issues that you're having to face today that 20 years ago, the council at the time, maybe they didn't have the money, right, or maybe they didn't have a plan, but they didn't address.
Right.
And they didn't just get better over time, they
get worse.
Got worse.
Yes,
and
yes.
So, is it true that the city today is facing several decades of deferred maintenance? And I'm not trying to say anybody didn't do something, but because there's lots of reasons why. Right. A lot of times it's probably had to do with money, but you got to do something.
Yeah, because the past couple of mayors, past couple of councils, I've been friends with all of them, and they're looking at what they have right then, right there. And the point where we are now is, I knew our water plant, we were at 100% capacity several times a year. When it's super hot and when it's really cold, we're at 100% capacity. We cannot provide any more water than what we have. So if we want to recruit an industrial prospect, we better have capacity. And so you build a plant for that extra capacity so we can provide more water. Because our plant, due to its age, we have to slow that process down to produce the quality of water that we need that's safe for our citizens. Well, if you do that, then you can't offer as much to other people. And some of the areas we're looking at developing that could be potentially in these TIF areas, in the project areas, they don't have sewer, or they're lacking in those utilities. Well, just to run the sewer line out to I-44 and Highway 62 is about $20 million, because you got to run lift stations and everything else. There's a ton of engineering that takes place there.
$20 million to run sewer along Highway 62 or Choctaw Avenue.
Yes.
Out towards where I-44.
That's correct.
So in another podcast, the city manager brought up the fact that we had a water park resort.
Turn us down.
That's nationally recognized.
That was 2 years ago.
So recently, it's like we weren't even really in the game because we didn't have what they needed. And so...
And there's hint of a resort area, and I talk tribal. And when they were first looking at it, and there was a large construction company of Oklahoma City that was bidding the project. And so I started calling, looking around. I was interim city manager at that time because I was concerned. I had been given numbers of 1 million gallons of water a day were the demands. And we don't have that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we have to make these changes, because if we don't change, we'll either be overrun or non-existent. So we have to be prepared for this.
Okay, so let's start doing some dive into this whole TIF, Tax Increment Financing. So here I am in my position overseeing the EDC. do you see the TIF project being an EDC project or a City of Chickasha?
This could be a City of Chickasha project just because it's usually with TIFs, and what we'll be looking at, it's not the fluff. It's infrastructure that we're looking at. So we're looking at sewer, water, roads, drainage. Drainage is key because if we can control some of our drainage, that opens other areas up of town which have been ignored because they're in floodplains. So if we can eliminate that, that really lowers the cost of construction for somebody to come in and develop that. So you look at the east side of town, so if we can control water on the west side, because it naturally flows from west to east going to the river, we can slow it down on the west side of town, then that opens up areas over here that we can develop, because it may take them out of the floodplain altogether. That's all up to engineers to decide, but that's kind of the plan.
So there's added cost in doing development in a floodplain that if you have several choices and you're like, okay, I can go here, but if I go to Chickasha, I really like it, but my costs are 25% more because of the infrastructure and everything, we're probably going to lose those, aren't we?
There's a good chance because they're like water. It's the path of least resistance. So they're going to go where they can work well with building inspectors and code enforcement, and where they can control their cost of construction easier. Less to engineer, less expense, and less to maintain. And so you have the schools which are building a gymnasium. Well, not looking, they're going to build a gymnasium with a safe room, everything at Lincoln School. Well, they've piled massive amounts of dirt there, which they brought over from the football field. Well, that's to raise that new building to get it out of flood. So they're going to have to raise that foundation by about 3 feet to get it above the floodplain. So it's just, if we can do something elsewhere to move that water away or control that water as it flows, maybe that doesn't have to be done. But there's still going to be time down the road a little bit.
Sometimes I'm kind of like the average citizen. I'm like, okay, what are we going to get? I can't wait till Chick-fil-A opens up. Can't wait till Roasters opens up. Scooters just opened up. I also very much, especially this week of Thanksgiving, appreciate our long-time generational businesses that have been around forever. But the average citizen, and I don't blame them, they're like, oh, well, what are we getting? And when we talk about a TIF, I think people have some have misconceptions. But then the more you hear about it, the more people are like, and it's not sexy, it's not cool, it doesn't, but you don't get the Chick-fil-A if you don't have the infrastructure in place.
That's correct, yes.
For that to happen. So tell me a little bit about, I'm sure I know your phone blows up all the time, but what do you think some of the misconceptions the public has about the fact that the city is just considering, I'm not saying we're doing a TIF, but the city is considering a TIF?
Enrichment to the developer and the pet projects that would be specific. I think those are the two biggest misconceptions. And the beauty of it is we have a TIF committee, which consists of multiple different governmental entities. So you have one representative from the city of Chickasha, which Zach Grayson's going to be chairing that. He's my vice mayor. You have a representative from Chickasha Public Schools. I know that's Jennifer Stegman. She is their CFO. On the Technology Center, it's their superintendent. And I do not know yet who the county representative is. And then also you have the Planning Commission, which works with Rachel Barnish and such, that person. So you have 5 that are set positions on there. Then they'll ask for recommendations of 7 names of citizens. One has retail experience, and you got to go to the different industries. And so at those 7 names, they'll go before that group of 5, and that 5 will choose 3. So it then becomes a group of 8 that will help with this committee, the TIF committee, which will go through the process of working with developers, working with engineers, working with planning and zoning on the TIF project and the TIF increment area. Because there are 2 separate things going on. They can be the same area or they can be totally different. In this situation, the good chance there could be 2 different things. Because if you're trying to look at flood work or controlling water, well, your TIF project is way far away. Well, you don't want to put the increment on the pond, because that doesn't generate any ad valorem or generate any sales tax. So you put an area where you have some growth and you designate that little area so you have the incremental change. Then you would split that between the city, the governmental entities, and the developer. And so the beauty of it is the developer puts that infrastructure in for you. And then based on their hustling, they get people in it, they increase sales, they increase ad valorem, then they get their money back through the splitting of the incremental change. And so, my belief, and it's all the committee to make how to work it out, is I could see the developer getting all of his costs back and his carrying cost. Because you got to make sure they don't go in a hole, because otherwise they're not really inspired to do anything. But the main focus will be on that developer is their project, not the development of the project, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you want that project to be really successful. So they'll be out hustling their own project while they're getting reimbursed with sales tax dollars and ad valorems for what they had to do to get to that point. So, I mean, there's so much misconceptions that, it's like, oh, you're just enriching people, but really it's a reimbursement. And we're able to build things to help improve quality of life in Chickasha, shopping, parks, wherever it may be, restaurants. We're having somebody else pay for it with a guaranteed we'll pay them back with money we don't have yet. And if the money doesn't come in, thanks. That's what you have to look at. I mean, that's the risk they're taking. And so we want to be successful because that helps everybody. Everybody's going to give up a little bit to make this project work. The developer gives up some, the city gives up some, the other governmental entities give up some because they're all ad valorem based. So they're giving up a little bit to all make this work. So it's 4 or 5 bodies working together to have a successful project. And so I'm excited about it because of the potential it could bring in and being site ready or prep ready for other people to come in and join us.
So,
is that good enough?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm impressed. So since you've been mayor, have you heard any speculation about like the MidFirst Bank building and what it might be on the upper floors, or?
Oh yeah.
Since
day one.
Okay, so there's been speculation, but as of right now, we still don't have anything being developed.
Right.
Do you have? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you have any concerns that if a developer came in tomorrow and said, I'm going to turn the upper floors into student housing or a boutique hotel or a mixture of both or something like that, do you think right now the city has all the needed infrastructure to make sure that from the fire plugs to sewer and water?
This is a very simple answer. No.
Okay.
We don't have the proper pressure, the proper flow for fire protection. And that you got to think safety. Everything I do is think safety. So you look around town now, you see where they're painting the top of fire hydrants. There's green, there's orange, and maybe black on the ones that are bad. And so that deals with a visual inspection of the flow of water. So they can already tell you just by opening a hydrant whether it's going to be enough flow or not. Well, downtown, I know there's a few of them. They may be painted green, but I know the volume coming out is not sufficient. So you have to have that to run this fire suppression system. Also, the city of Chickasha, we need more fire apparatus to reach the higher stories of the building. We have a ladder truck. You really like to have a basket at the end, so it's for safety. But it's also a lot more expensive. But in order to purchase that type of equipment, and it takes 40 months to get one now. If you order a fire truck today, it's 40 months before it shows up. Wow. And the cost is, like for a basket, is nearly $2 million for the truck. We bought a fire engine in October of 21 after we had one hit in an accident in July 21. We were fortunate enough to get one that was a demo vehicle. And we purchased it for $450,000. That same truck now is over $900,000. Identical truck. The costs have just gone out of reach. So as a city side, as we start doing this planning to do the water and such, as we develop, like, say it's MidFirst, that turns into a housing, we can do all the speculation we want. We got to make sure we have the fire protection and the apparatus to protect that building and the citizens in there. So that's got to be mandatory. So this also, while this development's going on, allows the city to start their plan and process, which they started the second meeting in October. Mm-hmm. They approved some things. Well, we know it's going to be 3-4 years down the road before we see them. So it gives us time to get there.
Gotcha. I've got a couple of questions been submitted by citizens through social media, emails, so forth. So I want to throw a couple of these out at you. How can a downtown TIF district attract private investors and businesses to contribute to the development of the area? Any thoughts on that?
Well, it gives them something to tie into. Right now, we may have a vacant lot with insufficient sewer, insufficient water, insufficient streets, not enough parking. So we can alleviate those items, and now it makes it easier for the developer to model what they have and place it in that location.
Can you discuss the potential positive impact of a downtown TIF district on property values in the surrounding areas?
Well, just the more activity you have, the better development. Let's say the property value of a building is $50,000 on the tax rolls, and it's an older building, and you increase the value of it. You gut it, re-roof it, new mechanical, new electrical, new plumbing. That value may go from $50,000 to $300,000. So that incremental change at $250,000, well, then the school district will get their $50,000, and then they get a share of that growth of $250,000, 50%, whatever it may be. So it's a win-win. If we didn't have that development, that extra $250 may never take place.
So as we're looking at wrapping up this particular podcast, with your previous experience on council and the mayor, if you were looking into a crystal ball for the next, you got obviously sons here that are in the Chickasha area, and you're like, okay, what are they going to see in the next 10, 15 years, do you think?
I think you will see a large commuting traffic population. I think you'll see a lot of people that work from home here because they don't want to put up with traffic. I think you'll see better parks. I think you'll see better revenue for the city itself, which goes back to more services that we can provide to the citizens. I mean, the city of Chickasha we have our functions very limited: fire, police, streets, water, sewer, and quality of life. Quality of life is your parks, trails, walking trails, biking trails, things like that. That all plays in together. I think you'll start seeing a lot more of that development taking place. But we got to give the place to generate that revenue. And that revenue is going to be these new buildings, new businesses, everything coming into play. And so it's kind of a hand-in-hand thing. I know I was talking to is another insurance agent, and he works in Lawton, lives in Elgin. He does all his grocery shopping in Chickasha.
Good.
So instead of taking an 8-mile drive to Lawton, or 10 miles, or to go to the store, he drives 30 miles up to Chickasha to come shopping because you can get around so much easier. So it's just, that's what I think people are looking. They're looking for a simpler way of life. And, there's enough I lived in large communities like Houston and such, and, I had really good experience living there. But you live in your little pocket, and you don't get out of your pocket. I mean, because it's just so congested. When Chickasha, you kind of know everybody. You get to know somebody. As long as I've been here, my family, since 44 and on, you do kind of know everybody. And my grandmother taught 43 years. So she taught a lot of kids, and there's a lot of people here that remember her as their first grade teacher. So it's kind of a neat place. You get that hometown feel. Yeah. And I think people are looking for that. They're looking for that social engagement. They're looking for a way to be neighborly with each other. And with the more development we have, it sounds kind of weird to say it, but if we can improve the quality of life, you'll start seeing more and more people desiring to be here because they don't have to go 35 miles to go get something. They can get it right here.
The whole goal with these is to get information out there. The thing about TIFs is there's a lot to it. I mean, you really have to spend time trying to understand it and then ask good questions. And we've received some good questions. Transparency is a big word.
It is,
and not just here in Chickasha, but in our state and our country. And from when we did the podcast with the city manager, he talked about how all these TIF meetings, open meetings,
all public.
city council makes the decisions. So all the city council meetings are all public.
Yes.
From what I've heard, that part of the process that the state of Oklahoma has set up is that I believe there's 2 town hall meetings in the process.
There will be.
And so as the committee gets set up and then they start looking at things, at some point there'll be a chance for citizens to come in and say, hey, I love this, or I hate it, or here are my concerns, or here are my questions. Is that kind of how you understand everything?
It is, because everything's public meeting, in government and the school districts. It's all open public meetings because it's the citizens' operation. It's their city council, it's their city government. And so we're here to serve them. And so you do everything out in open, and I want people to attend council meetings. I want them to reach out to me. Call me, because I want to be able to tell you what the truth is and what's really going on. And I just think it's important for people when they get on the chickasha.org website and they see those meeting dates, show up. Listen to what's going on. If you have a question after the meeting, ask them the question. Or if they have an opportunity to ask questions during the meeting, ask the question. There's no such thing as a bad question. The bad question is when you don't ask and don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. My whole thing is ask those questions and don't just assume, or don't just
exactly.
It takes more effort to show up at a city council meeting, or even watch it online. That's the other thing, you can watch it online.
Sure can.
So I think the more engagement we get, the more people, and it's just good for our community.
It's good for community. You get buy-in from citizens because they see the end game where you're trying to go. And, like I told you when I first came in mayor, was financial stability. And once we kind of got that, we started working on, and really part of my thing was increasing wages for the employees. We were bad. It wasn't good. And so we kind of got that, taken care of. That's a constant battle that you have to deal with. And now it is this infrastructure. We're trying to attack the infrastructure issues. So coming up with the city now, we were able to save a little money last year. This year, we've got millions of dollars in road projects that we'll start addressing. And so Jim Crosby at Public Works is supposed to be providing a list of the critical ones that we need to address first. I want to say it's probably about $4.5 million worth of road work that we're going to be doing. And some will be overlaid, some will be more impressive. But all this goes back when you start having more and more people, more and more activity. It wears that stuff faster.
Sure. Well, I love each week writing a column in the local paper called The Good Stuff. I like it when our community works together. I've talked about it several times that the artist from the Chickasha Area Arts Council that painted on the fence, Chickasha, good things happen here.
Yeah.
I believe there's a mindset out there that if you believe you can, it's going to happen. Doesn't mean you ignore and say, oh, there's no problems, because we've talked
we got plenty of problems.
But if we have this mindset of, yes, we can, and we're Chickasha, and good things do happen here, and we focus in on the good stuff, it's as we get close to Thanksgiving, there's a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot to be thankful for what the city of Chickasha does. We're in Festival of Lights season, and the volunteers that play a role in that, your family, the tradition that you've established, but the City Parks Department also plays a big role.
They do.
And then as well as Public Works in terms of who do you think puts those street barricades up. And so I know it sounds a little corny, but I believe it. We all have to work together.
And that's one thing I want to make a shout out to those guys in the Parks Department. I was talking to James, who's kind of like the lead role, those guys out in the park, putting the lights in the trees and such. And he was talking about how proud those guys were. They came back a few nights earlier to turn on their own trees so they can see how they looked. So, they're taking great pride in what product they're trying to put out there. Just like I work with a group of us on the footbridge. And, I want it to be just so. And I'll go out there throughout the season a few times, kind of adjust things here and there because, wind, temperature, that all affects how it looks. And so you constantly have to kind of massage a little bit. But, when we have a problem in Chickasha, which we're going to have more, we have them now, they'll keep always. either you could be divisive with it or you could be together with it and attack it as one. And I think we're really starting to attack things as one.
Well, I'm going to steal a phrase that Chet uses all the time. And I'm going to say, hey, it's Thanksgiving. The Christmas holidays are in front of us. Mm-hmm. We got a lot to be excited for in 2024. I think we're going to do a lot of investigation on this TIF. Don't know whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense, but I have faith that there's a process that will be very public and very transparent for everybody to analyze and look into it and see if this is a tool that we can use to help our city. But I'm going to steal Chet's phrase and say, make it a great day, and let's make it a great 2024.
That sounds great.
Thanks for being on the podcast today.
You bet. Glad to do it.